Greetings, parish orphans and retrogrades. Today, I'm going to be talking about fear and trembling, the topic with which Soren Kierkegaard dealt with in an effective Protestant Christian manner over 200 years ago. And yet I think we can do better. I think we can take on fear and trembling, the concept of anxiety in a Catholic way and in a efficacious way that will make all of the postmoderns that have treated of this topic from the 1800s, especially in the late 20th century, blush, because there's a more effective approach that has been elected to be neglected over those 150 years that comprise the advent of psychology. Today, with me to talk about this is someone that's become an expert on the subject, Patrick Coffin. How are you, Pat?
Wow, an expert in anxiety and fear. Thanks, Tim? Question mark. Great to be with you, sir. It's funny, you were on my show talking about how to beat anxiety, and here we are talking about the same thing, because it's not going away. There's like a giant pall, right? A giant funeral pall over the world, it seems. The news gets from bad to worse, and you and I have talked about this off the air. A few years ago, it felt like we were all galloping toward an abyss. Now it feels like the abyss is galloping toward us. It's something that affects Republicans, Democrats, traditionalists, progressives, liberals, conservatives. With our 24/7 doom scrolling news and people spending so much time staring at their black phone screen, and it's very bad for your mind. It's very toxic, and so we have to realize that this is not something that's afflicting only one slice of humanity. There's a thing afoot. Even in 2019, before the COVID mania hit the world, suicidal ideation and depression rates had already spiked. So people who follow mental health issues already saw this alarming increase in all the kinds of mental health challenges not going so well for the sufferers. And then boom, in 2020, it's skyrocketed. Some statistics that I've been looking at say it's quadrupled since then. So 2021, 22, here we are in 23. And the light at the end of the tunnel looks like Hoboken, with apologies to people in Hoboken. Yeah. So people need to do gut checks about why are they here on this earth? What's the purpose of life? What are strategies to overcome this kind of darkness, this I call it the shiny darkness of anxiety. Of course, anxiety is very much comorbid with depression. And so this is something that I think men in particular need to talk about, because men are really good at wanting to fix things. We're hardwired to solve problems and build and rebuild and restore. And when the wound is in your own heart, it can be dislocating and disorienting and frankly scary to feel like you've lost the narrative thread of your life. I think this goes to the way Adam Lane Smith is a terrific therapist and expert in attachment issues. And he says most psychotherapy is built toward women when it comes to depression. Women need emotional support, encouragement, someone to come alongside them and offer them, hey, I understand what you're going through, which is fantastic. Men need a purpose. If a man finds his purpose, he'll crawl over glass smiling to get it done. And so when men feel like they've lost the narrative thread of their life, they're used to being on the tarmac, they're used to being on the football field playing in the game. Now they feel like they're up in the stands and they're watching someone else's game and they're just barely a spectator. And so that's why I'm really glad you're talking about this with me.
Well, you have an upcoming event that is utterly relevant, and I want to talk to you about that a little bit later in today's episode, that I think is antidotal in terms of it's got wide appeal. And everybody out there struggles with one form of anxiety or another. So I want to talk about that in a second. But there are two dimensions that I really wanted to talk to you about after we did our last show on Coffin Nation, Pat. And the first one is this. It's that just as a personal thing. I promised people this would be anecdotal, and at the end antidotal, because we'll provide some hope. Hope is fuel, right? Mm-hmm. Well, okay. So here's the thing. people can on super chats can ask me, are you anything? I don't do this super often, and I want people to know that. But the first dimension that I'm going to launch into, unless we get some really, really personal brain busters coming over the super chats, is they describe anxiety as the shrinking of horizons. And I can feel this phenomenon happening to me on a really anxiety-ridden day. People will say to me, Tim, you've been canceled everywhere, disinherited, kicked off Patreon, lost in-person jobs, kicked off this and that social media. This is fearless. Mm-hmm. Maybe in a couple realms, maybe other people struggle with fear in that way. But all it takes is one realm where fear hits you between the eyes or in the heart. And the second you feel it taking over, your horizons contract. Your day, whatever you'd planned to do for that day, you feel it, the list of those ambitions shrinking, because you're like, I have to tend to this. I just have to nurse this wound. And I can almost literally, not literally, but almost literally feel my day shrinking, my horizons shrinking, my ambitions contracting. And it corresponds directly with what you said. So that's the first dimension. Would you say a word on that? Why does anxiety and fear strike at our ambitiousness as men so much? Our ambition in terms of what we wanted to accomplish for the day.
Tim, you're opening up a lot of important doors here onto hallways we need to walk down. The first thing that comes to mind is that when men feel anxious, fearful, or depressed, they interpret that very often as, oh, here's a problem now I need to fix. But this is not an external problem. This is not a widget. This is not about sandpaper or something building. It's not even a math problem. It's a problem of subjectivity. And I like your characterization of the shrinking horizons. It's like depression and anxiety move all the walls closer and closer and closer. And so you wake up each day, and if the day is more than 50 or 51% bad, you start to ask your question, what does this matter? Now that's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, there's the negative sense of that. What does this matter? In other words, life's not worth living. It's all meaningless. But the flip side of that, the blessing of it, is that you begin to live life more essentially. I'm saying this in light of the book by Greg McKeown, whom I do not know, but the book's fantastic. It's called Essentialism, the disciplined art, the disciplined pursuit of less, it's called. So sometimes a bout of, whether it's dysthymic depression or bipolar or just run-of-the-mill anxiety, you begin to call things that don't really matter because they're not helping you self-care. And so self-care is something that men, I think, have a hard time with because it sounds like you're being a wuss. Oh, Mr. Self-Care. Remember the Stuart Smalley parody on Saturday Night Live? You're good enough, you're smart enough. Al Franken.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah. Me neither.
And so this is why my spiritual father, Archbishop Sheen, named his show Life is Worth Living. That's the kill shot. That's the antidote to all mental illness, that no matter what it is, it's still worth living. And to me, the presence of anxiety in the human heart is one more proof, if the headlines weren't enough proof, that the Catholic dogma of original sin is true, that our natures are fallen, our intellects are darkened, our wills are weak. And so what was God's response to that? It was to enter into our human experience so that our horizons are his horizons in the person of Jesus Christ, the Logos, the God-man, who could have saved us by a card trick. He could have come down and announced on the shore of the Jordan River as he's being baptized, I hereby announce the salvation of the world. And that would have been enough. So why did he go through the betrayal of Judas and the baying mob, aided and abetted by the Sanhedrin? Why did he allow himself to be betrayed and sweat blood and be tortured and murdered? So that he can enter into all of our experience, the most abject terror where we feel abandoned. And his words on the cross, I think, Tim, you and I we're talking right now in Lent, my God, why have you abandoned me? Those are now permitted words because he baptized them. He lifted them from Psalm 22, which has this great resurrection theme at the end. And so it doesn't mean you're shaking your fist at heaven. It doesn't mean you're doubting God's existence. It's asking if you're a good father, and yet I'm suffering a lot. Why is that? And that, I think, goes to when St. Paul says in the letter to the Philippians, work out your salvation in fear and trembling. He doesn't say work out your salvation in a hammock listening to Perry Como, right? So
yeah,
he knows that anxiety is part of life. And look at the stuff that St. Paul went through. If I had to take one lash of the 39 lashes, I would be in semi-fetal for an hour, right? He went through that 4 times. He casually mentions this: shipwrecked, beaten, pummeled, stoned. So there's a guy who knows anxiety.
Yeah, and St. Paul also, they think he had crippling stomach problems, whether it was what we would call IBS or IBD today. You need an X-ray to tell the difference, but he would have that in like essentially a large skiff crossing over the sea without a heating pad, without dicyclamine, which every sore stomach sufferer knows well. And he would just have a job to do, probably seasick in a boat, in addition to having a crippling pains in his stomach. He had every reason to be a wuss if he wanted to.
No Wi-Fi?
None. Yeah, or he didn't even have 4G, right? 5G was a twinkle in the eye of Apple. Yeah, so I mean, this kind of brings me to, in some sense, you're talking about the original words of Kierkegaard's essay, Fear and Trembling, coming directly out of the Pauline epistle. What gets me, that I kind of already mentioned, the second dimension of it, fear, anxiety, that is so crippling, particularly for someone that's got a little bit of OCD. And I'll confess, I have a little bit of this, a touch of it. Even if you're brave in area after area, like people are too flattering, I'll get written emails or Patreon messages, and people are like, oh man, you just go through, lose a job, lose this, lose that, get canceled, and then march right through it. This is someone said to me the other day, it's like the Teflon Dawn. Yeah, that stuff doesn't trigger my fear. It never has. Back when I was young and thought I was indestructible, would get in street fights without thinking about it. That just never triggered my fears, fear of men. But fear of death and fear of sickness, particularly after my first daughter was born, that I have way more fear than a lot of those people that are saluting my fortitude over the airwaves. So all it takes is one zone where you get sucked in, and it's like a black hole, isn't it? You could be very fortitudinous in 999 out of 1,000 ways, and it can still ruin your day. All it takes is one area where you have a kind of crippling fear or anxiety, and I'll say, hey, Steph, would you look at this? Steph, could you feel this? And that coupled with a bit of obsessive compulsive, and you could get stuck for hours, checking under your tongue, feeling parts of your body if you have the bodily fear. So what I've asked you before, friend to friend, is what do you do? What do you do, like personally, when you feel pretty brave in every other area, but it takes this one area you're weak, and everyone's is different, or there are categories, and you're just burning all of your masculine energy and all of your time and all of your energy, your capability to even love your family. It takes away from everything. Well, how do you deal with that? And I think the best thing you said to me as the lady psychotherapist was, the first step is knowing that the fear can't actually hurt you. That helped me a lot.
Yeah. Fear is a belief, and beliefs can be changed. The sensation that fear can produce is disturbing, but it's not dangerous. And I think that from a Catholic perspective, the devil loves for us to major on minors. If you can get us distracted by the shiny metal object over there that really doesn't add up to anything, perfect, because we're off our game, because we're made to live out this mission, to spread the kingdom of God, to make disciples, to not have sterilized sex, to bring logos and order wherever we can, and to be kind along the way. And so if we can be distracted by whether it's an OCD loop pattern or a kind of a neurosis of hypochondria, well, perfect. You can almost hear the devil cackle, because our eyes are off the main thing. And that's the main thing, is to be focused on the main thing, which is seeking first. I love the words of Jesus are so simple, right? That you can have 100 PhDs, but you can't beat the 7-year-old purity of seek first the kingdom of heaven, and then all these things will be added. Again, back to Bishop Sheen, he has this funny way of distinguishing psychosis from neurosis. A psychotic person says 2 + 2 is 5. A neurotic person says 2 + 2 is 4, but he's disturbed by it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And true. Yeah. Or it could just be a very badly educated person that says 2 + 2 is 5. But one
it's just a number. Can't we be friends?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Can't we agree to disagree? Isn't my truth really that 2 + 2 can be 5? Pat, in Luke's gospel, we have the fowls of the air passage, and one startling but predictable factoid from Gordon blood history and predispositions, family history, pedigree is what one of my daughters, one of the twins, has taken in 3rd grade to a very distinctive kind of crippling anxiety. And I read to her from the gospel the other night, the fowls of the air, when Jesus says, behold the fowls of the air, for they sow not, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feedeth them. Actually, this is Matthew's gospel, Matthew chapter 6, verse 26. And I was telling her, actually, the purpose of this passage is not just Jesus. It's Jesus. It's not St. Paul, which is always more comforting me. The words of our Lord saying, the Lord, the heavenly God, does not want us to worry. He wants us not to worry. He wants us to do what we're commanded to do what we're put here to do, which is the strong sense of missiology that you imbued your opening statements with. And do them, and sometimes they might be hard, but don't worry about them. If they're hard, go through them and suffer the hardship. But the birds don't worry about how they're going to get their next meal. We shouldn't worry about how we're going to get our next meal. And the Lord loves us 1,000 times more than he loves the birds. This has brought me great comfort as an adult. I think my father directed me to this passage when I began crippling worry in 3rd grade, and it didn't help me much then. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if little Charlotte, who I was reading this to, was given any solace at all. But do you care to say a word about that? I mean,
yeah, it's beautiful. Jesus didn't die for the birds, and so his example of the Heavenly Father caring for the birds of the air, and that every hair on our head's counted, it's an enormous consolation. It means that nothing we're going through is a surprise to God. God's right. He never shows up late, but he wants us to embrace him freely. He does never burst in the door on our hearts, the door handles on the inside. And so sometimes that anxiety can be an invitation to open our hearts up and get out of that hall of mirrors, because you can't, as soon as and this goes back to, you were talking earlier about Claire Weeks, her work.
Claire Weeks, yeah.
If you're able to let go of the control of the thing that's bothering you, that's the beginning of healing. It doesn't matter what the affliction is, could be physical or mental. If you stop trying to control it, then you're set free to do the things you need to let your body heal. And your mind is part of your body. It's a mysterious thing. Your soul is not. Your soul is distinct, but there's that mind-body connection with the physical brain that is, you know more about Aristotle's holomorphic unity work than I do. But your body and your mind work together. And if your body is sick or your mind is sick, God wants to heal both. It's funny how when people have the flu, they do all the things they need to do to let their body heal. Rest, fluids, hot bath, hot toddy, whatever. But then if it's something to do with your mental life, and that's being handicapped or challenged, we try to control it. Maybe it's the taboo of mental illness. I don't know. Well, actually, according to Dr. Weeks, face it, accept it, float through it, and let time pass. That's it. You don't need psychotropic drugs. You literally don't need clonazepam or anti-anxiety stuff. That is putting a Band-Aid on what's often a broken leg. I'm not judging people who do, but I'm saying it's short term. It's short term.
And you ain't giving medical advice, but everyone in America now acknowledges the hyperdiagnosis of psychotropic drugs. So people consider this. I mean, there's always that if then statement. Well, if it's being diagnosed, then it might be getting overdiagnosed to you. Would you say a word, Pat, this also really helped, on what Claire Weeks means when she says float through? Like, is this what you mean by give up attempting to control the thing that's making you so anxious?
Yeah, it does. This is why activities like ice baths and cold showers are really good. Much better than rewarding yourself with a piece of pie or whatever, because the reward is telling yourself in the moment, I'm getting through this. I'm vanquishing this moment by moment by moment. That can deliver a dopamine rush, which is really great. Rather than say, this is so awful. Thank God at 4 o'clock I get a piece of pie or some reward.
Right.
By having the vanquishing the challenge in the moment is a much better reward because it's immediate. You're giving yourself an attaboy. What Dr. Weeks means, I believe, by floating through is in the spirit of acceptance that you really can't control it. Okay, I'm feeling depressed. I'm feeling anxious. I have these symptoms. I'm just going to walk through it here. I'm just going to enjoy my cup of tea. I'm petting my dog. There's a really good song on. And minute by minute, this is all passing. And I can flow through it. Just imagine yourself on a river and you've taken yourself out of your whitewater rafting raft, or you were thrown from it. You can still protect yourself. You keep your feet in front of you. You can see the trees, you're going down, and just float through it. It's a lovely metaphor. It doesn't mean necessarily, getting somewhere physically or going from one area to another. It means living moment by moment by moment, realizing, time's passing. Sky isn't falling. I still feel bad, but feeling bad is a temporary subjective state. And at this point, I want to bring in something that was enormously helpful for me, Tim, and that's the phenomenon when some suffering overcomes you. You can better see the difference between you who's suffering and the feelings of suffering. Because no matter what it is, that first person singular I have a mind. My mind doesn't have me. I have suffering. My suffering doesn't own me. It's something I'm going through now. So the seat of my personhood, that's the captain. That's you. And even if you can't control your circumstances, you can control your attitude toward them. And that's why all of this ultimately is a battle of mindset.
Now, I am a personal substance of an intellectual nature. That's me. And my suffering is predicated of me, right? It's accident, it's incident to me. I like that a great deal. Well, so a few quick plugs. What I want to talk about in the next 15 minutes is Hope is Fuel. If you folks out there, parish orphans and retrogrades, go to hopeisfuel.com. Patrick Coffin, a great gatherer of folks, both formally and informally. He's always gathering good people together, even just for text rants. But he also has a very, very strong power to gather together good minds that represent a smattering of worldviews relevant to one larger problem. That's really one of your great strengths, Pat. You put me together with so many people, and you got one of my friends, Royce White, for this conference you've put together for March the 18th. Hopeisfuel.com. If parish orphans and retrogrades go there, it's 8 speakers. Royce White is one of many of them. They're all experts in their own way, and you can get a discounted rate. Use the coupon code TGordon10. Parish orphans and retrogrades, go to hopeisfuel.com. That is hopeisfuel.com, and take part in this amazing conference. I'm really, really hoping lots of the retrogrades out there take advantage of this unique opportunity, because there's a materialist, determinist bent in psychotherapy. It's telling folks basically the opposite ways of solving their problems with fear and anxiety to the ones that are I think, true, the ones that are going to be presented at hopeisfuel.com. So I want to ask you some questions that'll help to exegete what your real purpose is with this conference in a sec, Pat. But first, I want to remind folks to like this video, subscribe, click the notification bell, leave a comment. If anyone feels comfortable, I don't always ask for specific comments, but leave a comment if you're comfortable, denoting the kinds of anxiety that you're riddled with and successful antidotes you've used in the past. Mine has always, over the last 15 years anyway, been body worry for myself and my family, hypochondria. And I'm always curious, sincerely curious, not this fake YouTube leave a comment curious, but sincerely curious to hear what other people are struggling with and whether they've gotten through it and how they did, if so. So leave a comment, but like this video, subscribe, click the notification bell. We're trying to get to 50,000 subs by the end of the year, hopefully before even fall begins. Most importantly, also, on the note of practical solutions, what you should all do is get out of your blue state, get to a red state. Today, I suggest the blood red swath of red states from Texas to Florida. It's what I did. I got from the bluest of the blue to the reddest of the red. And the people to go to are realestateforlife.org, the good folks who are pro-life and mostly Catholic at realestateforlife.org to help you today. Finally, folks have been asking me by email mainly, over social media, how the Patreon debacle's going. I basically got canceled. We're looking into a suit, yet another Gordon suit on behalf of religious freedom. We're still doing that. But if you would still like to support this show, go to locals in the show notes or Subscribestar. And if you want to make a one-time donation, remember, a man with a large family, it helps us keep the lights on in the house, let alone the show lights. Go to timothyjgordon.com and click donate. Okay, Pat, so Hope is Fuel. You named it this for a reason that makes sense to me. Do you care to tell us about the etiology of this conference, why you decided to put these folks together?
Sure. Well, it came from a conversation with my eloquent and brave and brilliant business partner, Ryan Moreau. Ryan obtained the hopeisfuel.com URL back in, I think, 2014. So this idea has been on his mind. And Ryan's been very frank and open about his own anxiety issues. And we met through church circles here in Southern California a few years back. And all of a sudden, our conversations began to gel around this idea of a movement devoted to gathering people together to help the masses of any religious or political persuasion who are struggling with very similar things. And thus, our world's first one, which is happening March 18th, is the inaugural event of Hope is Fuel. 8 mental health experts. We decided to make it clean and simple. It's going to be 8:30 to 4:30 Pacific time. And it's Royce White, former NBA star, ran for unseating Ms. Omar in Minnesota, a great commentator, fearless, hilarious, insightful, and diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, and really worked it out publicly. So a lot of respect for Royce White. I can't wait to engage him. He and I are going to do a special Q&A with me and with the people who get a premium ticket. So that's Royce White. Dr. Peter Breggin, a conscience of psychiatry. He's been fighting the psychiatric machine for over 40 years, and he's been in over 180 lawsuits against people like Eli Lilly. It was really Eli Lilly in their marketing and sales department that first identified or associated in the minds of the public depression and serotonin lack, or depression and brain chemical imbalance. And of course, because Big Pharma is in bed with big tech, if you go to any of the search engines and ask, what is depression, or just the word depression, you're going to get Pfizer ads and ads for Zoloft and Prozac and The entire panoply of psychotropic drugs have successfully been identified with brain chemistry. Well, Dr. Bregan spends his whole psychiatric, his work as a caring doctor of the mind, helping people get off these drugs and explaining that depression is not a lack of serotonin any more than a headache is a lack of aspirin. Depression is a loss of hope. And so you need to find out, at what point did hopelessness enter? When did that overtake your border, so to speak? So Dr. Bregan at Bregan.com, by the way, I'm always happy to throw traffic at Dr. Bregan, one of my heroes. Dr. Ann Gillies, who is an expert on overcoming childhood trauma and loss. She's from Ontario, Canada, very brave lady, very skilled clinician. Adam Lane Smith on attachment issues, how your attachment or lack thereof with your primary caregiver colors to a great extent the way you're able to attach to a wife or vice versa, a husband. So many people who are married have the same conversations over and over and over again, the same arguments. Well, if you're doing that, you may not have a communication problem. You may have an unresolved childhood trauma problem. And so Adam Lane Smith, he's very active on Twitter as the Prometheus. He's a treasured presenter at Hope is Fuel. Dr. Mark McDonald, child psychiatrist from Los Angeles, is going to talk about crushing fear addiction. Dr. Leland Stillman from Florida has a book called Dying to Be Free, in which he explains how you can know that Big Pharma exists to keep you sick and what to do about it. Free, actionable things you can start right now to turn your health around and to see your mental health struggles as an upward spiral, not a downward spiral. Who am I missing?
Sounded like
yeah. There's I'm all a jumble. It's going to come to me.
I'm going to check.
Yes. Oh, Dr. Nick Carderas. Yeah, Dr. Nick Carderas wrote "Glow Kids and Digital Madness," and this is really interesting. He has all of the statistical facts that you need on how to verify from an objective point of view the invention of the smartphone as a driver of mental health issues, particularly anxiety, and especially among young people. The mimetic desire, the increase of tattoos and metal piercings and goth and LGBTQ and the trans movement. It's all through social contagion done through social media outlets and what you can do for yourself and for your kids. So that's Dr. Nick Carderas. And wrapping up Hope is Fuel, we have an eternal perspective on hope. And that is, I still am so pleased that he said yes. And that's Bishop Joseph Strickland of Tyler, Texas. He's going to talk about hope from an eternal point of view, the hope that lasts, the hope that's supernatural, not just natural. So if you get a premium ticket, you have access to the live Q&As, and you get downloadable coaching tutorials, and you can download the whole thing and share it, and discounts on future stuff and merch and et cetera, et cetera. So hopeisfuel.com. T Gordon 10, I think, is the rules for retrogrades discount code.
Yeah, T Gordon 10. Yep. People use it. Go to, if you can open up another window, check out hopeisfuel.com. Now, how many hours of the day does that go, Pat?
1 hour per speaker, so 8 in total. So it's a pretty full day. It's going to fly by, and this could be a matter of life or death for people on the edge, because as you know, Tim, when you watch a great movie, there's often one moment in the movie that's your takeaway, the thing that you remember 7 years later.
Sure,
it kind of summarizes your experience, and that's true of every talk I've ever listened to. Even if it's an hour and a half talk, there's one line that jumps out at me and kind of captures my imagination and is very helpful. So this is 8 different versions, different angles on the problem of hopelessness, anxiety, and depression that I think it's going to resonate. Even the main landing page there, I think most of your audience is going to strongly identify with this as something that they've been waiting for. I'm also a recipient. I'm also going to learn along with everyone else as I guide them through the Q&A sessions. So we're very, very jazzed. We're already planning our next one, which is going to be Hope is Fuel Sheepdog Edition for the 4th of July weekend in support of military and law enforcement. So it's going to be a movement. It's going to be a podcast. It's going to be live events. But our first one is this one day on March 18th. And I hope to see retrogrades and paratrophins there in great numbers.
I I don't know why, but I've always been oddly skeptical that there's this conceptual nexus between the macroscopic and the microscopic when we talk about all the wacky stuff, wacky and really evil and startling stuff that's happened over the last 5 years, really since 2016. I count the beginning of my awakening from dogmatic slumbers being the week of the 2016 election, when we learned, the WikiLeaks dump, when we learned about Marina Abramovich and the truth of what the elites are doing behind the scenes in terms of witchcraft, not just statecraft, but witchcraft fueled statecraft. And I would say over the course of the last 6.5 years, that would be, one can say what used to be a conspiracy theory is, as Michael Knowles says, separated only from being recognized as a reality by about 6 or 12 months. And that is startling. And that does, even though it's macroscopic, it adds to the bucket of tears, right? You have one little bucket drop at a time of anxiety, and the anxiety causing chemicals that go in your bucket. And then if you get a big dump, half a gallon dump of anxiety from macroscopic events, the state of the world, the state of the country, the state of your state, probably, if you guys, too many of you live in a blue state, it all goes in one bucket. And at the point of overflow, this is the way a psychotherapist described it to a young Steph Gordon once, when she tried the deterministic psychotherapeutic route. He said it's like a bucket, and you get a panic attack or an anxiety attack when your bucket's overflowing. It's a simplistic model, but I think it's helpful. There's this real nexus between, we have no good spiritual father in the church in the form of the Papa. We were left by Benedict. Yeah, I know what you think about Francis, obviously. I have a different perspective on Francis, but it's in some ways worse than not having a father, having an abusive father. Most of us have a similar situation, a comparable situation with our bishops, our sort of local Papa. Too many people have strained relationships with their bio fathers. Most people out there are running around under-rested, under-prayed, filled up with processed foods and all that. I'm not super crunchy on the foods, but it's true. We're really running ourselves ragged. And it's a combination, some conflation of the macroscopic and microscopic. Would you just talk for half a second, Pat, about how hope is fuel, because of the natural variegation of the topics speaker by speaker with these 7 or 8 talkers, how it's going to have something for everyone? It's going to address everything I just said, from the macroscopic to the very microscopic.
Well, Tim, you've just given me a new way to describe it. People often say, "Oh, Catholic means universal." Well, that's one way to say it, but kataholikos in Greek means of the whole. It refers to the action of yeast in dough. So the church acts in the world as yeast does in dough. So every country, every culture, every language, every cultural matrix is potentially Catholic, because logos is order and speech and reason. And so we're all made to receive logos. We're all made to hear the good news that Jesus Christ is Lord and that he died for our sins. It doesn't matter who you are. You're made to hear that word, that message. And if you embrace it, then it changes your life. And now you have an exit out of the doldrums. Now there's wind. Now that you know what the sail is. You're waiting for the wind to take you somewhere on this great adventure. If you don't have that, if your bow is broken, you're in the doldrums, and if you don't even know that you have a sail, then you need to pay attention to the still small voice that says there's something wrong here. I don't feel the way I did about myself. I want to get back to what I know is a happier place. And so this longing for the Father is universal also. This is not just a conservative liberal thing. You're pointing out something very profound, that there's a fatherhood wound, and it's caused a crisis in masculinity. Why do you think we have this transmania? Why are we even saying, why do I have to say the words on Twitter, trans women are not women? the nonstop propaganda for things that would have been laughable 5 years ago is stunning. But I think that that macro in some ways is a synonym for micro. The architecture we produce, the music that we enjoy, that we write, that we make popular, that we pay for, the literature that we consume, the art that we create, the music, not only music, but say painting, all the arts are the externalizations of the soul. So if your soul is ugly, if your soul is wounded and confused and disordered, you're going to have disordered architecture and ugly buildings. Even your churches are going to be pug ugly because you've lost this source of capital B beauty. And so people used to come to God because of the order of the universe. Now they're coming to God because of the disorder of the universe. And all of the Hope is Fuel speakers have different angles on this central truth. We have secular speakers, we have Jews, we have Christians, Catholics, Protestants, because this is not a doctrinal thing that's going to be solved with, well, just look it up here. Here's the magisterial response. We all have a human nature. It's all fallen. And there are tools that everyone can learn starting today to turn that downward spiral into an upward spiral. And that's why we put it together. And that's why I think it's going to resonate. It certainly did with me when I started talking about this with Ryan and our team. And it's an honor to almost watch it unfold before our eyes, because I've never done anything so far in my so-called career where the feedback is like, I've been waiting for this for a long time. How do I sign up? I've been secretly struggling with this and I haven't really told anybody.
Yeah. I mean, this is what I wanted to give people the chance to ask us through super chats or whatever. Like, are you guys, come on, Patrick, Tim, do you guys really struggle with this? And the answer is yes. I mean, you and I are close personal friends, and we've talked about, one time a week at least, if not two. And I remember last summer we were talking a lot about anxiety, in particular kinds of anxiety. I think we were talking about hypochondria, with which both of us have struggled on and off in the past. And it's like, look, this is real. No one gets out alive. AJ Barker, who was my last guest on my last show, told me the other day, I think it's insightful, and I've conceived of this notion before, that I am such a night owl. I put off going to sleep, even watching one more episode of Frasier or whatever, because I have an unresolved conflict with death. And I've told Steph, I think that's what it is, not wanting the day to end, the light to go away. I buy that. And everyone has something, and no one gets out alive. And in some sense, I'm not a universalist. I'm not much of an ecumenist, but we are all in this thing together. And it makes sense that at Hope is Fear, you have people that are being brutally sincere in the sense of candor. Like, hey, I struggled with this, and that's why I became the expert in this. You struggle with X, you tend to care about X. That's how human remediation works as a process. So you have 7 or 8 people that are experts that know the ins and the outs, the a priori solution, because they knew so well the a posteriori daily struggles entailed by a certain type of fear. And I just think I wanted to give people the opportunity. I'm sure you'll have this with the conference itself on March the 18th, but I wanted to give people the opportunity to now ask us, say, is this real? Are you guys actually, why do a show on, what are the Catholic podcasters we know of besides Tim or Pat, or kind of branch out and start talking pop psych or whatever this is? Well, because this is very important, and it's related to being human. And I care about all things related to being human,
I've learned a lot from a Protestant minister and writer named Gordon Dalby. Shout out to Gordon. His website is abbafather.com. He's not part of this Hope is Fuel, but I've interviewed him before. And he writes with a real sacramental understanding of human nature and our need for the Father. And I learned his definition of a real man. It's a tautology, but I still like it. It's like a Buddhist koan, like a little puzzle. And it resonates with me. He says, a real man is a man who's real. Not fake bravado, not false compassion, not a simp, not a feminist, but real. And not a nice guy. We could do a whole show just on the nice guy pitfall. Wasn't Jesus a nice guy? Well, no, not really. He was not a nice guy. And we shouldn't imitate the false nice guy Jesus. Jesus was not afraid to be disliked by mortal enemies. And so, the problem is universal and the solution is universal. And fear, Jesus has a lot of opinions on fear and worry, and they're all negative. So I want to imbibe Jesus' opinion on worry. And he's not impressed by it. And it doesn't help us.
There's something enervating and anxiety producing. I want to try to work this out in real time, just as a response to what you just said. There's something enervating about thinking you have to please everyone, which is what these nice guys do. AJ Barker, again, on my last show, was talking about this Dostoevskian term, women's prophets. They didn't mean women prophets. They meant women's prophets. The Catholic space, I think even the Protestant internet space, is populated largely by women's prophets who tend to be nice guys that try to palliate everyone. They want to, they can't sleep at night if anyone's mad at anything they said.
Are they males, or is this an intergender thing?
I think they're mainly males. I think women's prophets are mainly males, at least in The Adolescent, which is the forgotten great Dostoevsky novel from which the term comes, women's prophets. And when you try to palliate everyone, then you're going to have an ongoing cycle of anxiety. Mm-hmm. And there's something to this, because it ties into what you said about the technology. The social media is being able to, presidency by polling. Remember, they said about the Clinton presidency, with social media, you can check in 1,000 times more frequently. Mm-hmm. And you check the temperature. And that's what youths are growing up with. And that's what even guys like you and me who do this for a living on the internet, you could, if you drive yourself crazy with popularity, then it's just a new form of Catholic political correctness. And we know Catholic podcasters like this, both you and I, without naming names. It's a lot of them. It's hard to do this and to be like, I'm putting a product out there. I want to feel good about it. I want to feel good about the truth of what I'm saying, the logos. Mm-hmm. And I want people to like it if they like it. But if they don't like it, at the end of the day, you're one of the main Catholic podcasters that doesn't suffer this form of anxiety, just like me. I really relate to being able to say, I'm not a nice guy. I do care about people, generally speaking, but I am totally comfortable with people not being inspired by something I said, or they think I'm too offensive to women or whatever. Well, there are a lot of women in my audience, actually, but no one would ever say I'm a woman's prophet. Particularly given the case for patriarchy and things. So it's something I've always respected about you, Pat, is just as a side conversational note, when you put together the beer bug conference, the COVID conference that got yanked like an hour in, the server went down and they tried to interrupt it. That's really what led to you being pushed off of YouTube, and you didn't care. I talked to you like that night. And you're like, well, whatever. I lost all my YouTube stuff. I'd like to get some of those old videos. I didn't have them backed up, but whatever. Like, for whatever kinds of anxiety you suffer, you do not suffer the nice guy double check in. I respect that. And I relate to that. That's another one I don't have myself.
I'm reminded of you're calling me from Bakersfield, announcing that the sky had literally fallen, that you were given the Golden Boot Award and you were fired from the high school. And I remember thinking, this is so great. I can't hold this in. Congratulations.
I remember.
You cannot see this now, but this is going to be such an upward bounce for you. It's going to blow your mind.
You said that. Folks, that's literally what he said when he was one of the first people I called. I was notified on screen when I was interviewing, what's his name? Henry Davis, the MAGA guy.
From St. Louis. I remember that.
St. Louis. Yeah. Steph came in. She's standing right there near the camera. And she goes, you're gone. We knew there was a chance. And you just see me like, whatever, I'll finish the interview. And then I started calling people. And you said that, and I knew you'd trod that path. And we talked about conversations you'd even had with our mutual friend, Matthew Marsden. And it's like, look, congratulations. This is what it takes. And I wasn't that bothered for the time. A lot of people get a lot more worried, but I've learned to just expect this every couple of years. Well, it seems like this has happened to you about once every 2 years. And it was kind of startling, even for me, when you got booted off of YouTube, but you just kept going, man. And you're doing these conferences that are a major threat to the establishment. I mean, Hope is Fuel, you're just trying to help people. This is a major threat, if the message takes off much, to the big pharma establishment. That's really cool.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going where I think where the bleeding neck is. Where's the greatest need, and what can I do? There's a lot of bleeding necks out there. There's a lot of problems hiding in plain sight. And no matter what you do, someone's gonna criticize it. You know David Goggins stuff?
Mm-hmm. No, just from you.
David Goggins. He does these pithy 20-second videos. He's an ultra marathoner, with the world's toughest man. He wrote "Can't Hurt Me," and just a magnificent specimen of persnickety grit and stick-to-itiveness and endurance. And when he was fat, people made fun of him. He's fat, and then he became this world champion. There's always some jealousy out there that wants to undermine everything you're doing. You just have to let the train go forward and let the dogs yap. The dogs can't stop the train. They're just yappy dogs. It's like when you're called a grifter. Like, how does this work? So a grifter is someone who's making money off of a crisis, I guess, and they go where they think the audience is going to pay them. I was permanently banned from YouTube. After I presented the evidence on Bergoglio's anti-pope, I was insta-pariah. I lost speaking gigs. I lost members. I lost friendships restrained. And no one would, with all the name calling, there's only one guy that had the pair enough to have me on a show and talk about it, and that's you. And so people have to recalibrate what they really mean by grifter. And it's just a term of art for people, I guess, are jealous, or if they feel dumb that they're not doing anything. Oscar Wilde famously said that there's never been a statue erected to a critic.
Right. Yeah. It's like the great closing soliloquy. It's actually Anton Ego reading his criticism. It's read aloud at the end of the Pixar movie Ratatouille. It's really artfully done letter, and he says the best thing a critic can do is to be a friend to the new, and the average piece of trash that we critique is worth more than our critique designating it so. It's like critics do nothing. The best they can do is to say, I'm going to stand by this thing, even though this thing, which may be really, really may work to the betterment of the world and human beings. It's new and it gets criticized because human beings are closed-minded and sodden and stupid and fallen because of Adam and Eve. It really rings true. And yeah, I try to do that. You've always tried hard to do that. I will say one word just on grifter. It's supposed to mean that you're a con artist. Yeah. And somehow on the Catholic internet, it doesn't mean that, or even conservative internet. It doesn't mean a con artist. It just means anyone that gets paid for any service. Like I can't think of.
People say writing books, you're a grifter.
Writing books is Dostoevsky was a grifter, evidently. The greatest novel, the great one, Dostoevsky. Yeah. He did write for a publisher, so he must have been a great. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. I don't think they do either, because if it's con artist, or I think what they mean, Pat, what do you think? Panderer? There are some panderers out there in the headspace, and they're not too far afloat from the ones I would designate a kind of woman's prophet. Do you think they just mean panderer?
Yeah, it's hard to know what they mean. They're a bit Alice in Wonderland about it. Words mean what they think they mean. Especially the Twitter sphere is just full of toxic stupidity. It's like describing a doctor. Like, would you ever say, "Oh, the brain surgeon that saved my daughter's life, grifter"? So only in it for the money, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
I've forgotten how much free stuff I've given away, and I really believe in the power of free. I've got free ebooks and discounts up the wazoo. If I wanted to do something that made me a lot of money, I definitely chose the wrong path, or I'm the world's stupidest grifter. But Yeah, you just have to ignore the yappy dogs and just ride your train and ask for tracks that go to the right spot.
Not the form of fear or anxiety that either of us struggle with, but both of us do struggle with it. Everyone's got something. Hopeisfuel.com on March the 18th has something for everyone. And I want everyone to go there, at least check out what Patrick has spearheaded here. Hopeisfuel.com. You can use the coupon code TGordon10 and get sizable discount. If there's, were we getting the super chat questions? I was trying to encourage the real personal ones. I'm not seeing. Do you see those, Steffi?
Yeah, you want to read from the beginning there because they can't hear me on there, so just look.
Yeah, I'm seeing. We gotta figure out a way to cull these. I agree with it. I'm not seeing it here. Pat, did you have anything else? Any other plugs you want to throw out? People asking, hey, how's Coffin Nation going? Hopeisfuel.com is what you've been throwing your efforts into recently, but do you have anything happening on?
I'm in a life pivot shift time right now. A lot of things are in flux and a lot of things will be resolved soon. I'm going to be more explicit about what's happening, but I'm really putting pedal to the metal and making sure that Hope is Fuel goes off and is a big splash. All my guests are being interviewed now by Steve Bannon on the War Room. I was on the War Room a few weeks ago talking about the conference because people like Steve Bannon, people like Tim Gordon, people who are commenting on the state of the world, we're like sipping from a fire hydrant of bad news. News all over the place. You help people navigate bad news for a living, Tim, and you need a palate cleanser. So that's our vision of Hope is Fuel. It's a palate cleanser, a place to just an oasis from the crazy to take a Saturday, March 18th, and listen to 8 different perspectives, all saying the same thing. Your anxieties are lying to you.
Yes. One of the big ones, thank you for the super chat, Eric, said the coming tribulation with kids, when you have kids, is kind of nerve-wracking. I'll be honest, Eric, I appreciate this remark because I can be really, really frank, no false bravado. When my youngest kid turns 18, then I do get quite fearless across the board. The way I am with, I don't care if you cancel me. I don't care if I have to fight a guy. I don't think anyone's going to pull. I never believe someone's going to pull out a gun, but the body fear, the sickness fear that we experience so much with Abby, and the notion of my kids suffering under some totalitarian regime that tries to turn them from the shining path, which is what this satanic rising regime, beast mode, seems to be promising. That really bothers me. When my youngest kid turns 18 and gets married to a good spouse, whatever, if we have 7 now, little Penny is just not even a year old yet. Every time Steph has a new kid, I don't mind telling you guys this, Eric V in particular, I feel my hypochondria spikes because okay, I feel like I need T plus 18 years, at the very least. Whatever else happens, I can go Braveheart mode, I could go Gladiator mode, but I feel like I need 18 years plus the birth date of the youngest kid. And that's not really the truth, is it? I mean, that's trying to assert some sort of control. And that's why it's scary to have young kids, because you really do want them. You want to survive at least till your younger kid's 18. And I'm with you. And that's one I openly confess to you, my friend Pat, and to all of you listening. I sincerely struggle with that because I can't control that, but I don't like that I can't control that. I'm not willing to live in a certain sense in a place where I can't control that. So that's a very telling remark and hopeful too. Yeah, I don't see a lot of questions here, folks. I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up. I want people to feel in these the live stream chats. I want them to feel okay on a show like this, really saying, you say hypochondria, what kind? Well, how often do you have flare-ups? Things like that. I hope that the hopeisfuel.com conference really gives folks the fuel they need to deal with the general and the general specifics, Pat. So
everyone has something.
Everyone's got something. That was the second
yeah.
dimension. Yeah.
And a lack of super chat questions is actually a good sign. If we were talking about widgets or Biden or whatever, it would be lit up. But this goes into a realm of the real, which lends itself to kind of quiet and thinking about it. Like when I first started, as I do close-up magic, as you know, I would get insecure if there was no applause. Not that I needed to be fed by applause, but I wanted a reaction. Like, my gosh, but no, stunned silence is a compliment. You know, sometimes people just need time to connect A to B.
Yeah,
and there will be a chance to, if you get that premium ticket for $98, but with the discount and so on, we're throwing discounts galore for this first one. You will be able to participate and ask Royce White, Dr. Bregan, Doctors Stillman, McDonald, Gillies, Cardaris, and so on. So hopeisfuel.com. Everybody has something. Your anxieties are lying to you. God is love, and perfect love casts out all fear.
Pat, I want you to get your badonkadonk to Mississippi at some point. I've been trying to get this guy out to Mississippi for a visit since I left California. I want you to see the beautiful forested hills of Mississippi sometime soon, my friend. We miss you, but I see you often enough and talk to you often enough on the phone that we don't miss you too bad. But we miss you.
A road trip should be in the works.
Good. All right. Well, God bless. Unless you have any parting shot, we'll get out of here. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for your time, Tim. And T Gordon 10 is the Rules for Retrogrades discount, Saturday, March 18th. I hope to see folks there.
Yeah. Hopeisfuel.com. People, at least go check it out. God bless you all. Everyone out there. I'll be coming with a sea mask episode tomorrow. It's my turn. We rotate between my channel, Elliot Holz's, Will Nolan's on Nolan Knows, and Michael Robillard's. We skipped one of mine because I was aiding in an exorcist. So this is my first one in 7 weeks. Tomorrow morning, it's gonna be good. We're taking on Jordan Peterson and the spiritual but not religious crowd. It's gonna be really good tomorrow. I'm looking forward to this sea mask tomorrow morning. God bless you all, Pat. Nice hat. Deus Volt, people.